Welcome National Senator for Victoria, the Honourable Bridget McKenzie.
Oh, I love that music. CPACers, how are we this morning? Yeah! What a great morning of discussion, and I'm really looking forward to unpacking so much that we've been able to hear this morning over our time of fellowship this weekend. So it's great to be back in the safe space of CPAC. But I just wanted to share something with you. On my early morning walks where I live in Wodonga, down in Victoria, I often head out to Bandiana, an army base, and depending on the time of day, I'll hear a bugle, a lone bugler, practising the last post. And in those moments, I was raised in a very tiny country town. It takes me back to the cenotaphs that are in every little tiny town around this great country of ours, every capital city, inscribed with the names of husbands, brothers, sons, fathers, often too many with the same surname, of those who fought for us and our country and our values a long time ago. But what of now? In my street, in your street, who would stand up and fight? Who would stand up and fight? Who would volunteer to defend our country, our values, in the event of a war? The answer to that question is incredibly complex than we might first assume, because a nation's story doesn't tell itself. It needs someone to tell it, someone to tend that story, or otherwise someone else gets to write it. And we have an industry in our universities, our public service, and elsewhere in our media devoted to deconstructing our national story and tearing it down. One of the reasons immigration has become such an incendiary issue is because nothing reshapes a national story more quickly than those who come to be part of our great country. Whether you've been here for 5 weeks, 5 generations, or 50,000 years, all of us have brought some baggage along the way with us. And it's what we do with that baggage once we arrive. Is it going to positively contribute to this great country, or is it going to undermine the very things that make us great? This is my 3rd CPAC address, and it's the 3rd time I'll be warning against an immigration program that's straining housing, infrastructure, services and social cohesion. And it's the 3rd time that I'll be discussing the excesses of greed and power of big business, big government and big tech, and the importance, the critical importance as conservatives, of small business, localism and traditional Christian values. Thank you. For 2 elections now, as a senior shadow cabinet minister, I have pushed for a population and settlement policy. This country hasn't done a green and white paper process on population since Malcolm Fraser was in power. And we've seen the consequent result. Congested cities, social cohesion, fraying, and indeed Australians, as they did recently in many marches, standing up and saying, enough is enough. We need to have that conversation to understand, what do we want Australia to look like in 50 years' time? Do we build big inland cities such as they have in the States or in Europe? Or do we just keep jamming millions of people into Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne? In Britain, the migration issue has gotten pretty real, as Liz has attested to. The wide open gate to illegal immigrants over recent years has resulted in major social problems and justified serious civic unrest. Here in Australia, due largely because of our geography, but also some tough decisions made by previous coalition governments, the illegal immigrant problems are not experienced to the same extent. But if you look at the New South Wales data around languages spoken at home, nearly 40% of kids in New South Wales government schools come from families where English isn't the major language spoken at home for families. To pretend we're not experiencing major social upheaval and change is to actually bury our head in the sand. The post-war compact of the need for migration has been broken because Australians rightfully see right through the self-interest of big business, boosting, needing their workers, skilled workers, big universities, boosting their profits from international students at the detriment of domestic students, and big bureaucracy that happily keeps that headline GDP figure ticking along at what it needs to be. Meanwhile, the individual personal GDP figures goes backwards. And what that means is living standards dropping. I'm firmly of the view, like Tony Abbott, that you can be pro-migrant and be against aggressive immigration. We need to be able to say who can come and share this great experience and effort to build a safe, sustainable and prosperous Australia, and who doesn't. Who wants to who shares our common values, who is prepared to stand under one flag. Who knows and respects our rule of law and doesn't want to set up another side scheme. We've got to manage the numbers so that we can plan for it, not just for our economy, but for our social cohesion going forward. And who today says welcoming Greeks and Italians from Europe, a war-torn Europe, wasn't a good thing? Who would say that now? No one. And together we've been able to build a magnificent country, a huge success. But that's because that wave of migrants, the Vietnamese after them, chose to become Australians. Chose to become Australians. And to share this common effort, because it's hard to build a country and a nation state that we can all be proud of. There's a few things that I think make Australia who we are. Our egalitarianism, service and sacrifice to each other and to our communities, making sure English is our common language, our love of sport, community, faith and family, and you've got to love hard work. You've got to love it, and we need to keep rewarding it. Last week I sat in Shepparton. Who knows where Shepparton is? Yeah. I sat in Shepparton with some Sikh farmers in that community. They were orchardists. They'd come from the Punjab. They love our country. They love the rule of laws. They believe in liberal democracies, peace and freedom, and they want to work hard. These are exactly the people we need in this country. We need more of them, and we need fewer people who hate liberal democracies, who don't want to see women in positions of power, who want to harm gay Australians, and who want to set up a separate legal system such as Sharia law. We do not need Islamists in this country. Thank you. These are hard things to say. They are going to be harder things to do because our mothers raised us to be polite, to love people, to care for our community. But if we do not stand, what's happening in Britain, what's happening in Europe will be happening right here. To feel loyalty to your country, you have to feel ownership. Your country has to have a stake in you, and you have to have a stake in your country. And I'm not just referring to recently arrived migrants. The average age of a person getting their first home in Australia right now is 36. I know, I was shocked too when I heard it. The average price, I thought it was all about smashed avocados. That's the age of my children. I stopped going out so much. But when you look at the data doesn't lie. To purchase a home in Australia, the average house price has climbed to be 14 times what the average Australian wage is. 25 years ago, it was only 6.5 times. When many of you would have bought your home, it would have been 3 times the price. So there is a real problem for young Australians. The Bank of Mum and Dad, and I'm sure there's a few bank managers here in the audience, is now the 11th largest lender in the country for the deposit gap in particular. And that's if you're lucky enough to have a Bank of Mum and Dad available to you. The social consequences of these statistics are actually enormous. And Charlie Kirk, whilst embodying his Christian values in the way he took the fight up to the left, also warned about similar consequences in the US of a credit-centric renter economy. And Charlie said, you have a generation that is renting more than it is owning. So when you don't own something, why would you defend it? If you don't own something, why would you defend it? These are the real issues that we have to deal with as a movement. If you're not buying your home till you're 36, exactly at what point are you settling down and having a family? Starting a family is a period of great vulnerability, and so the stability and security of being in your own home is critical for making that a success. Never mind the biology tick-tock, right? 36. It's an alarming situation. I don't think we've realised the sort of precipice we're standing on as a society. We now have a whole generation that's choosing not to have children or putting off children when this should be the most natural human thing in the world. The pressure on young Australians include the soaring cost of rent and housing, their HECS debts that take years to repay, and the diabolical choices, particularly for young women, about careers, childcare. For the first time in history, they are choosing not to have children or to have fewer than they'd actually like to have. And they're having to make decisions that are not in the best interest of their child. The well-being and development of their own children. Whilst the factors of contributing to this are multiple and complex, there is cultural issues at play because government can't do everything, and we shouldn't expect them to. But there are issues around childcare policy and also a consumerist and materialistic society that we've all contributed, myself included, over my life, but we've got to own that. We've got to own it because that's what's brought us to this place right now. We've now got a birth rate of 1.6, so couples are not even replacing themselves. And so who is going to pay the taxes to deliver the services we expect? We're back to an immigration program. So how did we get to this space within 2 generations? And I think you're hearing this weekend, there's so much synergy between our speakers. The issues point to a much deeper malaise that's infected Western society. The question of whether this malaise is a spiritual crisis caused by liberalism or whether liberalism has been caused by a spiritual crisis, I don't know, and I look forward to debating that and having that discussion over the coming couple of days. But what is that both the spiritual crisis and neoliberalism has brought us to this consequent place we're at. Some of us still like to say, well, you know, I'm an economic liberal and a social conservative. I'm now convinced that this country has papered over the large crack between liberalism and conservatism for too long. We've tried to make this unholy marriage survive for political expediency, and no more, no more. Because what happens with excessive liberalism at its end point is self-autonomy becomes the only form of morality. The very things that maintain a good life, the family, the community, the nation state, are corroded. There was once a time when we shared a moral framework, the Judeo-Christian ethos, if you're not a Christian, Christian values, if you are. But that ethos recognises that humans are fallen beings and they actually need non-government interventions of conscience, of family, of community, of agreed practices and beliefs as guardrails to keep them on the right track against the very worst of human nature. Not government, that. But it also gave us a language, Judeo-Christian values, a language around what was right and wrong, that there were limits to human behaviour. There are, if you like, natural laws. That framework has absolutely collapsed. We are now in a post-Christian, post-truth reality. People like our own Greg Sheridan have written, Christendom is gone and in its place are shifting and conflicting moralities, self-created truths, narcissism and endless conflict. And in a similar way, thanks for that, up the back, in a similar way, liberalism has proclaimed a world where there are no limits to the market, no limits to rapacious human appetite, no limits to consumption. So what does that world look like? It looks like global entities, and take your pick, Google, Amazon, Meta, BlackRock. It looks post-Westphalian. There is no nation state. There are no borders. It looks like gender ideology where humans can literally not believe their eyes about who's a man and who's a woman. Love the Scottish Enlightenment, love scientific method. Senses are how humans have worked out what is true, what is good, what is beautiful for our entire existence. But in this moment, in this time, in this country, we are being told you can't believe your eyes. You can't believe your ears. Anyway, it looks like young boys who are addicted to porn before they've even had a conversation with a girl, let alone their first kiss. And it looks like when you disagree with someone, have a different opinion from someone hurts your feelings, you're actually committing a crime. You can be cancelled or killed. Nihilism, man as God. Every man, woman, a God unto themselves, and the vacuum of former moral and ethical framework is replaced by a competition for raw power and who gets to wield it. We're all for the small, medium enterprises and entrepreneurs, but commerce via supranational platforms has extended its reach into our very habits. I forgot my prop, Jared. Hand me that. Your phone. Our very habits and our thoughts. Our attention span is mined for profits. every single second, every day, every week, every year. And guess what? We're all complicit. It's so seductive, right? Because it's super convenient, super convenient. Tight hips, that's for the over 50s. Big lips, that's for the under 40s. You name it, you can get it, we can get it for you quickly. Different tribes, same machine. This is the antithesis of conservatism. And I know there are many champions of free speech in this room, and I respect that, and we need to do that. But we are also trading our innate human desire for freedom, for the convenience and entertainment, to such an extent we're almost complicit in our own dehumanisation. Does that make sense? So forget the Stasi coming to knock on your door. They're already in the house. And they're in your kids' ears and eyes. It's here. We're risking losing our very humanity. So I've painted a terribly bleak picture. But we're here, and I love our theme this weekend: engage, unite, act, because that's exactly what we need to do. The answer is, what can we do? A lot, both as individuals, in our own small platoon of our family, in our community, our sports clubs, our churches, our political parties, but also collectively and politically. Firstly, we have to do everything in our power to re-enfranchise younger Australians, because the longer they feel left out of our country, the more likely they are to look for easy answers in radical ideologies. And as we've seen overseas, and in the US particular, when truth is proclaimed without fear, young people have actually found it incredibly attractive. So let's do more of that. Let's be brave. Let's also be respectful, right? So ears stay open to what we have to say. Secondly, I think we need to think very seriously about family policies. We need to make the physical and emotional welfare of children our first priority, not last on the list. Making our future, our precious future, something that is the workaround for our self-centred lives, particularly in that first 1,000 days. And I'm not talking about walking back the clock to where dad walks out, peck of the cheek, mum's chained to the kitchen. Those days are over. Sorry, guys. But there is a way we can have a modern conversation about this so that our daughters and our sons can be magnificent parents and live the good life with our grandchildren in a safe, sustainable and prosperous country. But we need to get the policies right. And thirdly, the centre-right of politics, and that's all of us, amen, has to stop fighting amongst ourselves. Because how the enemy has done this to us, highly disciplined, very well financed, and relentless, militant in their intent over time. We tend to just bag each other out. So I just think, and that's why this is so important, the stakes are too high. They've dug in, they're disciplined, well-financed and strong. And we also need to recognise that the solution to the breach of social contract that I spoke about between young people in our great country and the ownership that we have inflicted on society, the solution to that lies in true conservatism, in a Burkean conservatism. Local community, family, faith, our small platoons. We must be able to articulate our policies in a language that resonates with modern Australia and with actual actions. Live it out. Like Charlie Kirk, let your actions show your value system. It's not the government's problem to solve everything. The onus is on us. We're going to have to be countercultural, and I love that Liz said that before me. But it's true. It's true. And we need leaders to do that. Now, his communism aside, let's put on our Che Guevara T-shirts. He smoked cigars. He was a pretty good shot. My kind of guy. But this is what is in front of us. No more polite conversations to keep the peace at Christmas. We have to tell truth to lies. In the thank you. So in the political field, I'm certain ultimately the answer to our problems don't lie with political parties of protest. Unlike the UK and the United States, we don't have optional voting, we don't have first past the post. Everyone in Australia votes, and it's a preferential system, and that is something we have to grapple with. We need a party of government that rigorously applies its conservative values consistently across the board so Australians can trust what those politicians say and what they're going to do. History reminds us that riots and revolutions can look a bit the same. But some revolts have tipping points. Are we watching that right now? Has the US already had their tipping point? Is the UK about to? Let's put aside our differences. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. The stakes are too high. Choose discomfort over comfort, truth over lies, and let's get in there and fight. Thanks for having me.